I think I probably want to quickly ask Liseth, is it that persons will just be freely able to enter, or the Zoom admin will be letting person?
Yeah, Zoom admin will take care of that.
Okay, something to double check that. Thanks.
My ID Pioneers family, what a blessing to be celebrating 5 years of purpose. And what an amazing journey it has been since we started in 2017 with just 2 identity pioneers boldly stepping out by faith into uncharted waters. Since then, we have grown, and today we're forever grateful to be journeying alongside a tremendous tribe of over 60 identity pioneers across Kingston, Maypen, St. Catherine, and Manchester. The passion and resilience demonstrated by our volunteers over the last 5 years in supporting our youth to understand their purpose and identity is unparalleled. So this year, we are reflecting and celebrating under the theme Unstoppable. Because yes, we are unstoppable beings sent on a mission by an unstoppable God. At ID Pioneers, we are proud to be a Jamaican organization that is in service to its fellow citizens so that Jamaica may, under God, increase in beauty, fellowship and prosperity, and play her part in advancing the welfare of the whole human race.
Our vision is to see every youth in Jamaica and beyond living victoriously in purpose and powerfully influencing their world. We want to see a movement of identity pioneers all across Jamaica and the globe. This is in direct support of national and global objectives such as the Jamaica 60th Mission, Jamaica 2030 Vision, and of course the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Over the last 5 years, with God's direction and the support of our board, our volunteers, our donors, and our partners, we have been able to reach over 550 youth through our various programs. During the COVID-19 pandemic, our team remained resolute, and through their resilience, we were able to serve over 100 youth through our COVID-19 Link-Up series and our Mastermind Challenge, empowering them with a sense of hope, purpose, and supporting them to have a solution-oriented mindset and an optimistic outlook on life. Through our COVID-19 Education Relief Project, we were able to support at-risk youth across Kingston and Manchester to continue their education by providing them with well-needed devices and educational supplies. We were also able to offer scholarships to 4 promising purpose-driven leaders, supporting them to make progress on their purpose journey. From these programs, 7 trendsetters on purpose have been transformed in such a way that they are serving and making a difference in their spheres of influence as ID Pioneers ambassadors in their schools, their children's homes, among their friends, and in their communities. And this is what we envision: identity pioneers all across Jamaica, youths who understand who they are and are using their gifts, talents, and abilities to make a positive difference in their sphere of influence.
I'm Nathan Morgan, and I'm a mentor and an ambassador of the ID Pioneers program. The ID Pioneers program has helped me to stand in purpose by giving me the understanding that I can start my purpose from now, not later on when I've gained my degree or my master's in anything that I wish to accomplish. But in fact, being a mentor at my former children's home is basically a practice for me moving in my purpose towards becoming a historian and a corporate lawyer.
Along the 5-year journey, we've also equipped over 70 youth workers with purpose-related tools, mentorship, and coaching skills such that they are now able to support the youth that they serve to unearth their purpose and potential. We are conscious that any impact we are celebrating today would never have been possible without our key impact partners.
Partnership is the key to success when you bring together the strengths of individuals and organizations. As the saying goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
The JMMB Joan Duncan Foundation is delighted to support ID Pioneers in this area of identity and purpose discovery by supporting their Purpose Fulfillment Program. This program has benefited the lives of over 200 at-risk youth in children's homes. We see this as an avenue through which we are able to fulfill our own mandate of people empowerment and nation building. By supporting these young people to come into greater awareness of their identity, purpose, and potential, Jamaica's future looks brighter, and the path towards Vision 2030 becomes that much more attainable. The Foundation is happy to be an impact partner of ID Pioneers as we pioneer pathways for a brighter future for Jamaica and beyond.
We are grateful for all the partners that have come on board, for journeying with us, and for seeing identity as a key factor in transforming Jamaica's youth.
We want to acknowledge every identity pioneer that is on this journey with us. Definitely enough thanks to God, enough gratitude for his wisdom, direction, and provision as we navigate the uncharted territories of this season. To our board members, thank you for being very solid in offering wise and sound counsel. Thank you for holding us accountable and keeping us focused on our mission. To our family and friends, thank you for your unwavering prayers, encouragement, and financial support. And to our volunteer family, you are simply the best. It is very clear that you were made for such a time as this. And there is absolutely nothing that would have stopped you over the last 5 years. Your indomitable spirit, your passion, and commitment to serving youths into their greatness is so admirable. Thank you so much. No doubt, these are unprecedented times, But I want to challenge us, the youth we serve, our volunteers, our board, our partners. Let us step boldly into this next moment of history, this next moment of His story, being reminded of who we are. Unstoppable beings sent on a mission by an unstoppable God. Happy anniversary.
Wondering if, good evening, everyone. Just wondering if noise is saying, okay, so I guess we can actually start. All right, so good evening, a pleasant evening to everyone. A big welcome to everyone. Of course, we have a very interesting and exciting program ahead. And this webinar is actually really, the ID Pioneers really is just pushing the initiative in supporting the volunteers amongst our youth at risk. And we know that ID Pioneers aims to assist us all in understanding our purpose and identity in Christ as we serve amongst youth at risk. And we want to do a big welcome to those who are joining us on this journey for the first time. We'd like to also welcome our volunteers, right, who we're also here to support. And we are really looking forward to this webinar because it's really helping us in the area of our mental health. And it's, of course, a purpose, and I'll just read here what it says, a purpose-built webinar that will aid you in building your knowledge base and empower your growth and resilience. So we're really in for an exciting time. We have a rich group of panelists here to share further. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy. And and one more thing, we'd encourage you to turn on your cameras. We'd love to see your beautiful faces, if possible, you know, to just be a part and to make it, of course, have the most personal feel it can have. So I'll just move to the opening prayer, and then I will hand over to Lisette Chambers, who will take it from here. So let's just pray. Dear Lord, as we come before you, we thank you for this evening. We invite you in our midst, mighty God, to be a part of this. We ask you to help everything to flow and come together. Give us the courage to ask the questions that we need to ask. May all the presenters and panelists, Lord God, be composed and be able to flow as your spirit leads. And may we leave not the same way we came. May our volunteers and everyone on board be able to learn something new and be edified. May you minister to our souls through the content, and may you continue to cover us all and the initiatives of ID Pioneers. So we give you the glory and honor this evening and forevermore. In Jesus' name, amen. So I'll now hand over to Lisette Chambers, who is the Executive Director of ID Pioneers. And I'll now hand over. You can go ahead, Lisette. You can take it away.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. So good to be here with us this evening, and really, really great to be here with our volunteers, really serving you this evening. Always a pleasure, always wanting to acknowledge and big up our volunteers because of the amazing work that they do in serving youth into their greatness amidst difficult times, difficult situations, difficult circumstances. They've remained really resolute and resilient, and we want to acknowledge you, big you up this evening, and trust that this evening will be a time of just refueling, refreshing, empowering, you know, really, really looking forward to how this evening will unfold. I also want to acknowledge and welcome Director Andre Davis and his amazing panel of expert psychologists that he has pulled together to serve us this evening. Really thankful to every one of you for serving us this evening with your talent and your time. We know that it's really precious, and we're blessed to have you with us this evening. Also want to welcome everyone else that's joining us here this evening that may not be a volunteer. You may be the family member of a volunteer, you may be a youth worker. In whatever capacity you're joining us here this evening, thank you so much for joining us on this leg of our journey. We are on a journey, and we celebrate everyone that joins us on the journey at whatever point they join us. Just want to use this opportunity to help us to understand a little bit more about who we are at ID Pioneers and what we do. So let me go ahead and just share a couple, like 2 slides on who we are and what we do. So we are a nonprofit organization, as Amanda would have mentioned, and we have a vision. And I really would love to invite every one of us to close our eyes with me. We want to be able to just close your eyes with me and just envision this. Because this is what we envision here at ID Pioneers, as we envision that we will see every single youth in Jamaica and beyond living victoriously in their purpose and powerfully influencing their world. We envision a Jamaica where every youth is using their gifts, their talents, and their ability to influence them and serve themselves, their family, their community, and the nation. That's what we're envisioning. I hope you can see it, because I get excited when I see that vision. And it is a vision that is bigger than us. It's a vision that God has called us to. And it's not a vision that one can see naturally, but by faith, we're seeing it and we're taking steps towards it. And we're excited about it, and just want to be thankful for everyone that has joined us here in the room this evening, because you now get to be a part of this. And we believe that this seminar will also support us as youth workers, as we're supporting youth, the realization of this vision. Every youth in Jamaica and beyond living victoriously in their purpose, and by extension, they're powerfully influencing their sphere, their circle, the world. And that's our vision. And in terms of who we serve, wherever youth are, we are there. So whether they are in juvenile correctional facilities, in children's homes, in the schools, in the church, we partner with social agencies. If they're in communities, we reach out to what we call street leaders. Anywhere between the ages of 12 and 25 years, we are serving youth. That's who we serve, because we believe that this is the generation that is really critical. This is a really critical season in the life of a human being, and so we want to get to pour into their lives and support them to be the amazing human beings as adults that God has created them to be. And in terms of what we do this through purpose camps and workshops, career and life purpose coaching, youth worker training and conferences. We also serve parents by supporting them to understand how to approach child development from a purpose-driven perspective. And we also offer scholarships and grants. And a lot of what we do primarily is really partnering with youth-oriented environments and support them to transform their atmospheres into what we're calling purpose fulfillment incubators, such that the dreams and the purposes of youth can come alive in our schools, in our children's homes, in our juvenile correctional facilities, just about wherever youth are found. And so this is a little bit about what we do as an organization, and we're excited that we have our volunteers that are supporting us to fulfill this. We have our board members, such as Director Andre Davis and others, that are guiding us and holding us to different governance and regulations to ensure that we're doing it in a way that honors those who are partnering with us, and honors God, and honors the youth that we're aiming to serve. So that's just a little bit about who we are, and we are really grateful this evening and believe that this seminar will make a huge difference as it relates to our volunteers and the other youth workers and individuals that are joining us here today, because I believe, as you will hear later in the presentation, there are certain experiences that one has no control over that really impacts, may impact one's identity, one's ability to walk in purpose, one's perception of self and potential and worth. And we think of the trauma that results from issues like adverse childhood experiences and such, that impacts how a young person, how a child views themselves. And we come across a lot of this as in our work with youth. And so we're believing that this seminar this evening will really, from two perspectives, support us, help us to have a lot more understanding of just the landscape within which we are serving youth, and also provide practical tools that we can use as we continue to engage and support youth. But it will also support us as youth workers, because we are human beings and we are dealing with our own adverse childhood experiences, the trauma related from that, that we are dealing and living in what we call a VUCA world, one that is very volatile, uncertain, complex, and very ambiguous. And there's just so many things that persons are navigating in this season. And so us as youth workers, us as adults, we do need this forum this evening. And so I look forward to how it will benefit us, and by extension the youth that we serve. So that's it from me, but we love to give away stuff here at ID Pioneers. We love to give away stuff, and so I want to kickstart the evening by giving away something to our early bird. And our early bird for the evening is, let me see, Rosalie Wedderburn. Rosalie, you're there. Welcome. It pays to show up early. It's an early bird catch the most worm, so it pays to show up early, Rosalie. Welcome again, and we do have a wonderful ID Pioneers branded mason jar for you. We're going to work out a way to get it to you. Our amazing admin will certainly ensure that we get it to you. Welcome again, everyone, and leaving you in the capable hands of Amanda and our panel of experts who will be serving us this evening.
Thank you very much, Lisette. I hope everyone can hear me. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, so thank you very much, Lisette, for greeting us all. And if I didn't introduce myself, I think, let me just pardon my manners there. I missed that point. My name is Amanda James, and I will be the moderator for this evening. Okay, so just to move forward, and a big congratulations to the winner also of the Mason jar. Thanks for being on time. So it does pay to be early, right? So you got your cup there. So now I'm going to move on to the introduction of our main speaker for this evening. And this is Mr. Andre Davis. So I'll just go ahead and just briefly share about who Mr. Davis is, or who Andre is. From 2002 to the present, Andre Davis has served as a clinical psychologist at Bellevue Hospital, Jamaica's premier psychiatric hospital. For 23 years, he was a senior associate counselor and clinical supervisor at Family Life Ministries. He retired from Family Life Ministries in April 2022. Andre holds a Master of Arts degree in counseling psychology and graduated with high honors from the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology in 1999. Additionally, he holds a Bachelor of Arts in Theology from Jamaica Theological Seminary. The licensed Jamaican psychotherapist is known for his compassion, insight, and competence as a clinician. He is married to Marsha Augustine Davis, and they have a 9-year-old son. and they strive to encourage those they encounter to achieve their full potential and to contribute to their families and communities. A member of the Jamaican Psychological Society, Andre is licensed by the Council of Professions Allied to Medicine, CPAM, to practice in Jamaica. In addition, he serves on the board of ID Pioneers, as well as director of mentorship with Mentoring a Nation, a ministry focused on parenting. Currently, he is on medical leave from Bellevue Hospital. So I'm just going to ask everyone to just help me welcome Mr. Andre Davis, who will be sharing with us this evening. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here with you today. And we are going to be looking on the subject matter of, let me just step out 1 second. I need to reset what I've chosen, making sure that it can optimize for share the sound. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're going to be looking together at your mental health in a post-pandemic world. Let's see if I can get this thing to move. So mental health is an integral and essential component of health. The World Health Organization Constitution states health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. An important implication of this definition is that mental health is more than just the absence of mental disorders or disabilities. Mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So mental health is fundamental to our collective and individual ability as humans to think, emote, interact with each other, earn a living, enjoy life, have healthy relationships. And on this basis, the promotion, protection, and restoration of mental health can be regarded as a vital concern of individuals, communities, and societies throughout the world. Mental health is critical to our personal well-being, or as I said, our interpersonal relationships, and to successful contribution to society. Mental health conditions consequently impose a high burden, not only on individuals, their families, and society, but also on economies. On those who suffer from mental disorders are more likely to experience premature death, exit the labor force, miss days of work, and maybe work at a reduced capacity. Mental health is the foundation for emotions, for our thinking, for our communication, for learning, for resilience, and for the development of healthy self-esteem. Mental health, as we keep on saying, is foundational to our relationships. Mental health is the emotional and spiritual resilience which enables us to enjoy life and to survive pain, disappointment, and sadness. It is a positive sense of well-being, an underlying belief in our own and others' dignity and worth. So mental health means striking a balance in all aspects of your life: social, physical, spiritual, economic, and mental. Reaching a balance is a learning process. At times, you may tip the balance too much in one direction and have to find your footing again. Your personal balance will be unique, and your challenge will be to stay mentally healthy by keeping that balance. Good mental health is not just the absence of a disorder, but includes a positive sense of well-being and coherence, the ability to initiate, sustained, and develop mutually satisfying personal relationships, and the ability to cope with adversity. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a global crisis for mental health. It has fueled short and long-term stresses and undermining the mental health of millions. A recent publication in The Lancet estimates a 35% increase in depressive disorders and a 32% rise in anxiety disorders in Latin America and the Caribbean in 2020 due to the pandemic. At the same time, mental health services have been severely disrupted and the treatment gap for mental health conditions have widened. The research has shown that 1 in 5 persons who have contracted the novel COVID-19 virus become mentally ill within 90 days. This is how serious this pandemic has been. And so the major mental illnesses that affect many across the world, as we just stated, was anxiety and depression. And we have seen that it is having increased challenges for people as they deal, some of them, with the long-term effects of COVID-19. Mental illness does not discriminate, mental illness. Many people who have a mental illness do not want to talk about it. But mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of. It is a medical condition just like heart disease or diabetes, and mental health conditions are treatable. We are continually expanding our understanding of how the human brain works, and treatments are available to help people successfully manage mental health conditions. And in Jamaica, that is free to the public. Mental illness does not discriminate. Mental illness, it can affect anyone, regardless of your age, your gender, the geography, income, social status, race, ethnicity, religion, spirituality, sexual orientation, background, or other aspect of cultural identity. While mental illness can occur at any age, 3/4 of all mental illness begins by age 24. That is within the captured area that we serve in ID Pioneers, right? So mental illness will often emerge by that age, by age 24. Mental illness takes many forms. Some are mild and only interfere in limited ways with daily life, such as certain phobias or abnormal fears. Other mental conditions are so severe that a person may need care in a hospital. Many students are affected by their mental illness, and it may slow down their progress or alter their projection educationally, depending on its severity and the impact of what we call internalized stigma. Mental health problems can affect a student's energy level, their ability to concentrate, their dependability, their mental ability, and optimism, and all of this can hinder their performance. Research suggests that depression is associated with lower grade point averages, and that co-occurring depression and anxiety can increase this association. So stigma is often associated with mental illness. Look on the picture here and see if you can see some of the things that we call people in Jamaica. We say them sickhead. We say them silent mad. We call people madman and madwoman. We call them nutty or crazy, wacko, loony. All right? All of these different things are what we call people that we say have a mental illness. Stigma and discrimination continue to be a barrier to social inclusion and access to right care. Importantly, we can all play our part in increasing awareness about which preventive mental health interventions work. We envision a world in which mental health is valued, promoted, and protected, where everyone has an equal opportunity to enjoy mental health and to exercise their human rights, and where everyone can access the mental health care that they need at the specific time in their life. A stigma is when someone views you in a negative way because you have a distinguished characteristic or a personal trait that is thought to be or actually is a disadvantage. So it creates what is called a negative stereotype. Unfortunately, negative attitudes and beliefs towards people who have a mental health condition are very common. Copeland and Hopton in 2000 argue that there is ample evidence to show that mental illness is not merely a biological issue, but is also affected by social and political circumstances. Regardless of the perspective or approach taken to understand mental illness, it has to be acknowledged that when a person is assigned a label of mental illness, they often take on an identity that is stigmatized and valued negatively. Mental illness can be deeply dehumanizing and alienating. It is generally regarded with anxiety and fear, and often leads to rejection and exclusion in the community and by others. For many families in ministry and the public at large are affected by mental illness than any other category of disability. Far more families in ministry, far more persons in the community have this particular condition. I believe that these are some of the reasons why we see stigmatization in the church. Mental illness is stigmatized in many of our churches in ways that other disabilities are not. The stigma may be greater in churches and denominations that are much more inclined to pursue evangelism and outreach, because they are the ones that when they're on the road, they have to interact with persons who might have strange behavior, and this creates lots of feelings of fear. And when things are not understood, then it creates problems. You see, mental health conditions are a very broad range of conditions affecting thinking, perception, mood, emotions, and behavior. The typical pastor or ministry leader may have some knowledge of the signs and symptoms of some conditions, but as an in-depth understanding of how the attributes of common mental health disorders impact church participation or spiritual growth is extremely rare in my experience. We haven't had a commonly accepted ministry model for mental health outreach and inclusion. Many common mental health conditions are characterized by symptoms that come and go. The need for support and the types of support needed may vary greatly from year to year, and in some instances, even from week to week. So this thing is kept a secret. The presence of mental health related disability is often difficult to quantify or measure, even for highly trained professionals. Children and adults with mental health conditions who come to church often try very hard to keep their disability hidden from church staff and volunteers. Many seek to avoid any kind of special treatment or support that might single them out as being different. The stigma connected to mental illness that is prevalent in Christian community causes many to keep their struggles to themselves. Often they are situationally specific. Signs of mental health disability frequently emerge from the unique demands and cultural expectations people face in the situations and environments they enter throughout the week. So a person with a mental health condition associated with sensory processing, in other words, how information goes through the senses, may have no difficulty sitting through a Bible study or a sermon, but he or she may experience profound distress if the worship team tests the upper limits of performance on the sound system during a Sunday morning service. So in other words, when they turn up the music, all of this, their senses will be so stimulated that it feels like they're in pain. That is a byproduct of the fact that their brain, how it processes that information, is different from how others who have a normal functioning body do. So, and many experience, for example, extended periods in which they are relatively symptom-free. Consider a teen or an adult who experiences recurrent episodes of major depression. They may function at a high level for many years. They may even serve as a pastor or in other key leadership positions in the church. As they become symptomatic, in other words, that there is the emergence of the illness, they may have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. They may struggle with lack of concentration or forgetfulness, and they withdraw from activities and relationships that they would have thoroughly enjoyed over the years. And people might not understand, why is this person acting so different? That's because underlying issues are there. And so we're going to explore together the mental illnesses that are very common in our community here in Jamaica. Mental illness is a pattern of thought or behavior that causes significant emotional distress, pain, or prevents normal functioning. The Mental Health Act of Jamaica states it as a substantial disorder of thought, perception, orientation, or memory, which grossly impairs a person's behavior, judgment, capacity to recognize reality, or ability to meet the demands of life, which renders a person to be of unsound mind. Or mental retardation, where such a condition is associated with abnormally aggressive or seriously irresponsible behavior, and mentally disordered shall be construed accordingly. And that is the Mental Act of Jamaica. So the most common mental health illnesses that are found in Jamaica are personality disorders. Approximately 41% of our population has either a mild, moderate, or severe personality disorder. Mood and affective disorders, that makes up about roughly 36%. And in that category now, you will find bipolar disorder, which we're going to talk a little bit about, at being about 1.5%. Major depressive disorder is going to be much larger than that. Anxiety disorders, broken down, is about 17.7% of the population, and schizophrenia is about 1.2 to maybe as high as maybe 2% of the population. So 1 in 5 people experience a mental health condition. So I would not be surprised if you were to ever take a poll online tonight, that I would discover that there have been some participants tonight who have either had a mental health condition in the past, or who are currently experiencing a mental health condition, or maybe in the future could experience a mental health condition. The general factors that contribute to people becoming mentally ill are normally associated by a number of different factors. There can be biological factors, psychological factors, social factors, and events in childhood. So inherited traits, that which was passed down from one generation to another. Negative life experiences. So if there's a history of trauma, that history of trauma can negatively impact the brain, because it affects how the brain processes information and how that person might respond to negative experiences in their environment, either social or sometimes their thinking process. Environmental exposure before birth, exposure to viruses, to toxins, to metals, to alcohol and drugs, right? So these problems normally cause changes to the brain cells or its chemistry's hormonal chemical imbalances. One big thing that affects us are what we call adverse childhood experiences. And this describes a traumatic experience in a person's life occurring before the age of 18 that the person may remember as an adult, or if they don't remember, has been suppressed enough that it still has an impact on how the person functions. Adverse childhood experiences encompass various forms of physical and emotional abuse, neglect, household dysfunction in childhood. ACEs have been linked to premature death, as well as various health conditions, including the development of mental health disorders. So here you can see the pyramid. So there is generational or historical trauma. In our instance in Jamaica, we have the impact of slavery, social conditions, the local context within which the person has been raised, adverse childhood experiences, disruptive development of the brain or neurodevelopment, social and cognitive impairment, adoption of high-risk behaviors, right, such as eating or taking drugs or being exposed, right, diseases or disability, and those factors can all lead to a premature death. So here are the areas. So it's abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, witnessing a parent being abused, sexual abuse, neglect, physical abuse, emotional abuse. In the household, as we said, if there was a person who was born or who has a mental illness or is this highly dysfunctional, that can impact the child's life, or if someone in the family was incarcerated, or if there has been a threat to mother through violence, exposure to substances, or the breaking or dismantling of a family through divorce. All of those factors can have an impact on a child. So there are other factors, community and environmental factors, such as being exposed to bullying, racism or classism, community violence. Research has begun to include these experiences as ACEs as well, because they create the same biologic changes as the original 10 ACEs. So one of the big things that we've also discovered is that if a person grows up and has had adverse childhood experiences, if they continue in the process and have toxic stress, right, witnessing domestic violence in the home, chronic neglect, then that can have long-term issues for that person. Because stress becomes traumatic when danger, risk, fear, or anxiety is present. Now let's look at anxiety disorders. In Jamaica, 1 in 4 persons have an anxiety disorder. The National Comorbidity Study reported that 1 in 4 persons met the diagnostic criteria for at least one anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorders have a 12-month prevalence rate of 17.7%. Women have a lifetime prevalence of 30.5% and 19.2% prevalence in men. That is information related to us in Jamaica. So the prevalence of anxiety disorders decreases with higher socioeconomic status. But please do not think that that does not mean that persons who are in a higher social status do not have anxiety disorders, because many do. Anxiety manifests itself in children, but you will look for particular signs, like look out for if your child is finding it hard to concentrate, is not sleeping or waking in night with bad dreams, not eating properly, quickly getting angry or irritable or being out of control during outbursts, constantly worrying or having negative thoughts, feeling tense and fidgety, using the bathroom often, always crying, is clingy and doesn't want to leave your side, complaining of tummy aches and not feeling well. While for the adults, we will see the manifestation of a number of different manifestations of anxiety: generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, a trauma-related disorder that is called post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, phobic disorders, panic disorder with or without agoraphobia, and atypical anxiety disorder. So let's take a look at a couple of them. Anxiety disorder: persistent and excessive worry about everyday things that continues for months or longer, with various symptoms including fatigue, poor concentration, insomnia, muscle tension and restlessness, panic disorder, recurrent and unexpected sudden episodes of intense fear, accompanied by a rapid heartbeat, skipping beats, sweating, trembling, shortness of breath, and feelings of impending doom. Very often the person feels as if they're going to die, that they're going to have a heart attack. Social anxiety, the fear of social or performance situations where feelings of rejection or embarrassment are anticipated. I have had performers, singers who have had severe social anxiety, and I've had to help them to prepare to be able to go in front of large crowds and to be able to sing. And these are talented people, but they are scared to do presentation. They are scared to stand in front of people because they are afraid of being criticized. They're afraid of being judged, of making a mistake. Those can be some of the features that are manifested in social anxiety. Phobic disorder, irrational fear or anxiety, maybe avoiding a specific situations, like persons who are afraid to drive over the bridge to go into Portmore. Those are some of the things that can suddenly emerge for some people. Agoraphobia, excessive fear or anxiety, one or more situations, such as traveling on public transport, being in an open space, so they would not be able to attend a football game, being in enclosed places, right? Crowds, or being outside the home alone. This may lead one to become very housebound. Obsessive compulsive disorder. Many of us remember the series back called Monk that was on TV, where there's chronic, uncontrollable, and persistent thoughts or obsessions and behaviors or compulsions. The person is afraid that they're going to get germs, or they're going to get HIV, or they're going to become ill. So they're constantly washing their hands. They're constantly checking doors or double checking to make sure that things are a certain way. Common to all of these are panic attacks, right? Whether the person has post-traumatic stress disorder, OCD, generalized anxiety, the common to all of them are panic attacks. And so what is of interest as well is, although most of us think of depression as the most likely trigger for suicidal thinking, people suffering from anxiety with untreated anxiety can also develop thoughts of suicide and even act upon these thoughts. So what about depression or mood disorders, right? Major depression is a common disorder that is found throughout the world. It is fairly high in our population. And usually it is manifested in, one second, let me go back. Usually it is manifested in a depressed mood. The person has difficulty sleeping or sleeping too much, what we call insomnia or hypersomnia. They lose interest in the things that they would normally be interested in. They struggle with feelings of worthlessness or guilt. Their energy is depleted. They have fatigue. I have had clients who to move from the bed to the bathroom was so excruciating. They felt as if they had done a whole day's work just to move from the bed to the bathroom. They have problems remembering, concentration problems, appetite disturbance, whether they're gaining weight or they're losing weight. They might have what we call psychomotor changes, where they're easily agitated, or they become so almost, it would seem to others as if they are so lazy, but it is actually part and parcel of the illness. And of course, there might be suicidal thoughts or preoccupation with death. Those are some of the common symptoms of depression. What is interesting is that there is a difference in how depression manifests itself in men versus women. Men tend to blame others for their depression, while women blame others for, the woman blames herself for being depressed. He might act out his inner turmoil while she turns her feelings inward. He needs to maintain control at all costs. and very often will never go and seek help. She has trouble maintaining control and may have outbursts in some instances. Men can become overly hostile and irritable when they're depressed, right? While the woman always tries to be nice, and the male might attack when hurt, while the woman might more withdraw when hurt. Not in all instances, no, but very often. The male tries to fix the depression by problem solving. He turns to sports, TV, sex, work, alcohol, right? He feels shamed by the depression, becomes compulsive, a timekeeper, terrified to confront his own weaknesses, and tries to maintain the strong male image, while a woman tries to fix the depression by trying harder, turns to food, friends, emotional needs, feels guilty for being depressed, procrastinates and delays deadlines, exaggerates, obsesses about weaknesses, right? And the slightest kind of failure, it's as if her world is coming to an end, while the man tries to act away his depression and might turn to drugs and other means to try to cope. The female tries to think through her depression, and she may, in essence, find that she has struggles with her weight and so on, but they're usually the ones that end up going to see the doctor. Bipolar disorder is only found in about 1.5% of the Jamaican population, and it is characterized by periods of deep, profound depression or alternating with periods of excessive elevation or irritable mood known as mania. It is common, severe, and persistent, and is usually a serious lifelong struggle and challenge. And it is on a spectrum where the person might present to the doctor as being mildly depressed or severely depressed, but they might not see the doctor when they're in hypomania or severe mania, when the mood is elevated. That is why sometimes it takes a long time before this condition is actually diagnosed. And by that time, often so much damage has been done because the person's mood or behavior is so erratic. So they tend to be very grandiose. They have a lot of plans. When they're in mania, they have a diminished need for sleep, excessive talking, right? Or pressure of speech. They have racing thoughts, flight of ideas, right? They're quickly moving from one point to the next point. They're very goal activities in terms of sexual desire. So they're kind of excessive pleasure seeking, right? They can make very, very big decisions all of a sudden, and it can come crashing down once the mania begins to shift. In Jamaica, you'll also find persons who have psychotic disorders, where there's an alteration of perception of reality, delusions, hallucinations, believe that they're hearing voices, right? And this can be, the thoughts and the disorders, impaired social and occupational functioning. Very often in the church community, we will confuse schizophrenia or psychotic disorders with demon possession, right? And so I'm not saying that there aren't demonic influences, but you must be able to make a distinction between the person having a condition that is actually affecting the physical brain versus the spiritual dimension. And so that is where it requires a certain kind of understanding and exposure. Schizophrenia is common. Schizoaffective disorder, which is where the schizophrenia and the bipolar features are together. Delusional disorders, where the person believes, for example, I know of somebody who believes that they're a Jew when they're a Black person, and there is no indication that there's any kind of Jewish blood or kind of ancestry in that family line. Some persons have a brief psychotic episode, which only lasts for a short period of time, and so they cannot be classified as actually having schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is not a split personality. No matter what you want to hear people say or what is said, schizophrenia is not a split personality. All right. The main disorder that affects how people think, feel, and perceive. And the hallmark of schizophrenia is psychosis, which is hallucinations and delusions. All right. So very often, so the person might also experience disorganized speech, or what they might talk in what I call a word salad. So they tell you they're speaking to you normally, but all you are hearing is a mix-up of words. Sometimes you will hear different kinds of things put together to create their speech, but that is a feature of the illness. Other people are disorganized or they have catatonic behavior. Catatonic behavior is when you see the person standing rigidly or in a kind of a strange position. Some of them, and you might see persons, some street people that have who have a mental illness, you might see the person is in one position for a very long time, maybe staring at the sun, maybe just just not moving for hours. That is catatonic behavior. And of course, there'll be other negative symptoms. And we know that the management of it is through the use of antipsychotic medications. Jamaicans have a big issue about medication, but we can always talk about that a little bit more. Common in Jamaica are personality disorders. A personality disorder is a type of mental disorder in which you have a rigid and an unhealthy pattern of thinking, functioning, and behaving. So a person with a personality disorder has trouble perceiving and relating to situations and people. This causes significant problems and limitations in relationships, social activities, work, and school. And so the research in Jamaica has found that 41% of our population scores above the scale cut point, indicating a diagnosis of personality disorder with a level of severity ranging from mild to severe. Persons with personality disorders were significantly more likely to be single, 63%, male, 60%, between the ages of 18 and 44, 77%, and of a lower socioeconomic status. And so with that, let me just play this for you.
Personality disorder has really three characteristics. The first one is that people constantly are in conflict. They have a great deal of difficulty in resolving conflict, and almost everything becomes a conflict. The second finding is something to do with psychosexual relationships. And the most common one in this country is called hypersexuality. In other words, where the individual has no governor on the amount of sexual relationships they have with different people. And the third issue is the business of dependency. And there are two types of dependency. There is psychological dependency, which in Jamaica is best explained by the Jamaican concept called lead farming, where you cannot survive on your own. You have to survive on somebody else. And then you have the physiological dependence, which is your dependence on some kind of physical substance, like alcohol, like cocaine, like cannabis. But one of the biggest physiological dependencies in Jamaica is a dependency on food. Now, when you add up these three things together in individuals, you get a personality disorder person. We did studies on the psychiatric unit, on the medical wards, in the population, and we found out that maybe 41% of people in Jamaica have the propensity to have a personality disorder.
Wow. Isn't that something else, guys? So there are different types of personality disorders. One is more fearful, afraid of rejection, and tend to withdraw. They have the extreme ascentics, like, the character, Then you have the person is narcissistic, overly exaggerated self-importance. And we have the persons who have what is called a borderline personality, where they have an unstable identity, emotions, and their relationships are normally very conflicted and very poor. All right. Antisocial personality are found in Jamaica. This disorder in which the person, usually a man, exhibit a lack of a conscience for wrongdoing and even towards friends and family members. They may be aggressive and ruthless or cold and cunning, right? Clever con artists, right? Most criminals do not have this condition because they do show concern for their family and friends. But this particular personality disorder begins to emerge as what we call conduct disorder in early childhood, in the adolescence, which then eventually develops into the full-blown antisocial personality disorder. All right, so so it's very important that we understand that in Jamaica, we also have high substance misuse, right? Substance use disorder is a broad umbrella that covers addictive disorders involving various substances of abuse. And in the diagnostic manuals that the psychologists and psychiatrists use, these are related to alcohol, caffeine. In Jamaica, we have issues with people who drink a lot of Pepsi, a lot of soft drinks, which are high in caffeine, and they end up having issues with insomnia. They can't live without drinking coffee or drinking Pepsi. And so the high use can actually lead to them eventually having issues. So they will present to the doctor that they can't sleep, but many times the doctors don't ask about the caffeine, right? And so, of course, I've had to treat persons with these conditions. And so I often will ask, how much Pepsi do you drink a day? And sometimes the persons look at me in shock, but it is certainly an issue that is there, because all of this has an impact on towards pleasure and reward. And so it is key that we understand that how drugs stimulate or create a stimulant for them to maintain the cycle of wanting to deal with this. There are also, we need to know that persons who are exposed to the paraphernalia of drugs, cravings can be triggered not only by exposure to the drug itself, but also exposure to associated stimuli related to drug use, including the paraphernalia and environments that are linked to drug use. And that is why you'll find that people will keep going back to the similar places where they have had the experiences of taking drugs. So seeing a pipe that is used to smoke cocaine into freebase, for example, can trigger a burst of dopamine in the nucleus accumbens in the brain, which then has an effect on drawing the person to return. And what we know is that substance-induced psychiatric disorders can emerge, including psychosis, including an impact on what we call their mood. So they could have a substance-induced manic episode, withdrawal, delirium, intoxication, right? So how do we treat all of these things? Of course, we use psychotherapy, and we also use medications. Medications is a common type that is used, and there are different kinds of medications, from tranquilizers, antidepressants, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers are the general kind of things. Please do not tell people to stop taking medication. You are not their medical caregiver. And it is important because sometimes we've had people who, because they missed one or two of their medication, they ended up being ill for weeks and months. And so it's very, very important that we are very careful with that. I want to wrap up our time by looking at, so how do we look after our mental health? First of all, we need to manage our stress level. Understanding and managing stress are essential. Stress is a situation that triggers a particular biological response. When you perceive a threat or a major challenge, chemicals and hormones surge through your body, stress triggers what we call your fight and flight response in order to fight and to prepare you for anticipated danger. A stressor is anything that causes the release of stress hormones. So there are two broad categories of stressors: physiological or physical stressors and psychological stressors, right? And so those are things. So what is stress to me might not be stress to you, but nonetheless, if we perceive something as being a stressor, it will cause the body to produce the stress hormones. And if your body is in constant state of the stress hormone being produced, then what happens is that the frontal part of the brain does not get to function as well. It actually shuts down. And so you could be in this constant state of attempt ready for something bad to happen, right? Adults spend about 1/3 of their life at work, and work can contribute to their mental health or to their ill health. And so it is vital for us to know that our workplaces need to be friendly towards our mental health. So if you work in an environment where, for example, it is too loud or there's high stress, there have to be ways to bring the stress level down. Develop a positive self-esteem. This is a very important thing, because persons who possess a low self-concept this could be a source of stress for the person, because they feel that they must constantly prove their worth, with the result of placing unrealistic demands on themselves. The other thing is a low self-esteem and the need for approval can actually have an impact on relationships. So these scars are often a lingering byproduct of being brought up in a family, and maybe in a dysfunctional family setting, right? And very often the quest for acceptance may be what originally draws some people even into ministry. It can also be the thing that draws some people into a relationship with somebody, because they're anticipating that this person is someone supposed to love them and totally accept them. My challenge is to you is to be the real you, right? There is what we call a differentiated self, right? As a solid self and a fused self, right? So in an unhealthy relationship, two pseudo selves come together and fuse into each other. One person losing and the other person gaining self. The solid self, however, maintains its individuality and does not merge. The solid self has beliefs, opinions, convictions, and life principles. So this pseudo self is a byproduct of emotional pressure, right? So in plain English, this is a false version of you. It seeks other people's approval and validation. So if you live in your pseudo self, and guess what? You'll never be able to fulfill your purpose, because your gifts and who you are will never be shared with the planet. So the pseudo self can also leave one vulnerable to sexual brokenness, because low self-esteem creates a climate for development of hiding the real, the fragile, the vulnerable, and also to be exploited by others, because what it leads to is a deep sense of shame, isolation, and loneliness. And this isolated loneliness is often the precursor to clinical depression, right? And we know as a fact that obsessive thoughts about sex or fantasies about having even extramarital sex may be a mask for feelings of depression. In our Caribbean setting, you can develop what we call the roast breadfruit syndrome, which is where, you know, the roast breadfruit, it black on the outside, roasted on the inside, it's white. Where you have a person who is trying to be a white person, right? So this identity problem can be identified as the roast breadfruit syndrome, and refers to people who, though black-skinned, see and identify themselves from a white and Eurocentric perspective. What happens is that this creates an identity crisis. When roasted, the green skin of the breadfruit becomes charcoal black, while the inner flesh is white in color and doughy in consistency with a similar taste to bread. Its appearance gives the concept of Black people who think themselves as being white. And what they found out is that many of these persons who took on this particular belief system for acceptance ended up changing their skin color, bleaching the skin, and so on. So the characteristic features of this syndrome, including an overwhelming desire for acceptance by European society or by others in our particular society, that says that you need to be a browning. How many of you remember the song Brown Girl in the Ring, tra-la-la-la-la? It's never the Black girl in the ring, tra-la-la-la-la. Quite interesting. Some of that has actually created a scenario for some of our people developing psychosis, right? And so Professor Hicklin proposed an African Caribbean individuals in an attempt to rationalize their identity may actually develop psychotic symptoms, where in other words, that they lose touch with reality because of the crisis of this conflict inside between the difference between who they are in reality versus the Eurocentric picture. We also need to learn to be resilient. Resilience is a process whereby you need to face adverse situations, tragedy, trauma, threats, relationship, family problems, or any other significant source of stress. Resilience doesn't mean the absence of stress. Resilience simply gives the person the strength to carry on with their daily activity during a very difficult situation. To improve your mental health and manage a tough situation, you have to learn and develop resilience through your thoughts, your behaviors, and your actions. Benefits of resilience. One of the key benefits of resilience is the ability to balance your emotions and stress in your life. Resilience will help you to express your emotions appropriately and help you to avoid being stuck in anxiety, depression, or other negative moods. And one of the key ways that you develop resilience is to have supportive and caring relationships within and outside the family. Relationships that provide love and trust and offer reassurance and encouragement help to boost a person's ability to be resilient. Other factors include making realistic plans and having the capacity to carry them out. Confidence in your own abilities and problem-solving skills. And every person reacts differently to stressful events and traumatic experiences. And so they have to develop strategies to build resilience. That is one of the big things that you have to learn to do. Another thing is that you have to change your mindset. Stressful events are going to happen in life, right? You can't change that, but you can avoid crises as unsurmountable problems. You can avoid seeing them as unsurmountable problems. Deal with the present stressful situation and think about solutions. Also find positive things out of difficult circumstances. People grow mentally as a result of adverse situations, and you will feel that you have achieved some positive through a distressful situation. And as has been said before, build better relationship with close family, members and friends, and learn something new about them and maybe how they coped with the challenges that they faced in their life. Make time for yourself. If you have lost moments of time that you had, then be creative about carving a few minutes each day to recharge or decompress. Whether you're going to have your cup of tea, with your crackers, or you sit down and listen to some music. If it's possible to just go and sit solo, schedule something enjoyable, right? And even though we have the pandemic things, you can also have virtual meals with friends, virtual lessons, right? Learning something new. Set realistic expectations. There is no script. Set small achievable goals for the day or for the hour. Remember to prioritize what is important to you and your children, and be forgiving to yourself if it is not perfect, right? Move towards difficult situations. Don't move away from them. Develop some realistic goals and try to achieve them. Do some positive things regularly that even in a small accomplishment will help you to move forward. Celebrate success. No matter how small, we must highlight the things that have gone well, right? Make life a celebration. Eat well. There is research to suggest that what we eat may affect not only our physical health, but also our mental health and well-being. Eating well, a well-balanced meal rich in vegetables and other nutrients are associated with feelings of well-being. One 2014 study found high levels of well-being were reported by individuals who ate more fruits and vegetables. Interesting. Remember the power of sleep. Sleep deprivation can affect your mental health. Sleep and mental health are closely connected. Sleep deprivation affects your psychological and mental state, right? And your physiological health. And those with mental health problems are more likely to have insomnia and other sleep disorders. Keep fit. Remember taking a short break from sitting by doing 3 or 4 minutes of light, intense physical movement, such as walking or stretching, will help ease your muscles and improve blood circulation and muscle activity. Regular physical activity benefits both your body and your mind. It can reduce blood pressure, help manage weight, reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and various cancers. All these conditions can increase susceptibility due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what do we do with persons who actually have a mental illness? How do we approach them? Remember, first of all, that they're human beings. Be respectful and compassionate and empathic. Be a good listener and responsive in a non-judgmental way. Speak in a straightforward manner and genuinely express your concern. Help them to connect them when they are needed to, right? And if you have somebody who is suicidal, what do you do? Be compassionate when expressing love and care for the concerned person. Avoid statements like, your suicide will hurt your loved ones, or you have so much to do in life. Those are not necessarily going to help the person. Do not be judgmental. Listen patiently to what the patient has to say. Remain calm and stay positive. Remove any object that might be used to harm, that they can use to hurt themselves, and get them to the hospital so that they can get treatment. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions? And at this point in time, what will happen is that the panel will come in and they will help us to be able to answer the questions. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for sharing. Apologies for my camera being off for a bit. I'm having some bandwidth issues here where I'm at. So because of the connectivity, I had to turn it off so I could actually hear better. So I'm turning it back on for a bit so that we can continue, or I can moderate. Thank you so much, Andre, for sharing. Actually, it's so unfamiliar for me to call you Andre. I always call you Sir Davis. But I know that based on the environment, I'll just comply. So Andre, thank you so much for sharing. It was a very enriched and balanced presentation. There's a lot that I'm sure that persons have taken away. And I'm sure that persons are bubbling with questions. But before we really move to that segment, we would like to have our second giveaway. So I'll just go ahead with the question. And please, it's really, this prize is going to go to the first correct answer in the chat. Okay. So we have our admin person on standby, ready to find that winner. Okay. So I'll go ahead with the question. What is one type of youth activity that we do? As in, what is one type of youth activity that ID Pioneer does? So I'm waiting for the answers. Waiting for the answers. Let's see who is going to give it a try. Let me repeat the question. What is one type of youth activity that ID Pioneers does? Let's see. I wish I had the Jeopardy soundtrack. I'd definitely be playing that. Definitely. We want to see that answer come in. Okay, so we have one response here. One response. So we have Michelle saying mentorship, Nadette saying football. Well, I'm going to let Lisette be the judge, but I think we're actually aiming for not specific activities, but more umbrella activities. Let's see. All right, just to give a clue, it was shared in Lisette's presentation earlier. Michelle says children's home. And let me see. No, that's more what? That's more like specific. Okay, well, let me see. Still looking for the answer. Going to homes. Quite. All right. Well, okay. Mishka says scholarships. I think Mishka was the closest. Lisette, you can let me know. Lisette? Okay. So Mishka says scholarships. So that's actually a correct answer. Scholarships and grants, but we'll give it to you. Congratulations, Mishka. Thanks for everyone else who participated. I see Steve here put Christian outreach programs. Thank you for trying, everyone. But the closest response is Mishka. So Mishka, you actually won yourself a mason jar, compliments of ID Pioneers. So the admin will definitely reach out to you to give you more information as it relates to how you can collect your prize. Now we're going to be moving into our panel discussion. And before we do so, however, we would love to introduce our lovely panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce them, and then we'll get ready for an exciting range of questions. So I hope everyone has their questions ready. All right, so I'll be hearing firstly on Jim Monroe. So I don't know if we have the images ready or they. So I'm going to go ahead now. Here. So Jim Monroe. Jim Monroe is a Christian who loves the Lord and has a genuine passion for people. He is dedicated to serving others. His ability to empower, inspire, and encourage others to be their best has been widely recognized. He has been a Christian for over 40 years. Currently, he is a director at Faith 5 Fellowship of Ministries in Canada. He is married to Dawn, who has been a great source of encouragement in all areas of his life. As a couple, they share in ministry together. A graduate of the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology and the University of the West Indies, Jim has also appeared on Family Time as a guest presenter, the Family Life Ministries radio program on Love 101. Jim is also a facilitator or presenter to different church groups and pastors on various family-related topics, including short courses on basic skills in counseling or pastoral counseling and marriage and family. He has also done presentations at the Bellevue Hospital to employees who give care to the patients there. Jim is a director in the Revenue Services Department of the Heart NSTA or Trust, in addition to his counseling ministry. So that's Jim Monroe, who is one of our panelists. Another one of our panelists is Samuel McDermott. So Samuel McDermott has a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's in counseling psychology with an emphasis in educational psychology. He currently works as a community therapist for the Department of Counseling Services, which serves under the Ministry of Health in Grand Cayman. In his 3-year span as a psychotherapist, he has worked with CPFSA and the Ministry of Health's National HIV Program. Prior to this, Samuel had worked as a social worker for 4 years, first for the Family Court in Kingston and St. Andrew for the Ministry of Health. Samuel is an avid lover of music, reading, the theatrical arts, and random trips to Adventure's Door. His personal mantra is, free your mind and everything else will follow. Our other panelist, Stacey Ann Smith. Stacey Ann Smith is the founder and CEO of Pursuit International Foundation, an NGO targeting eliminating human trafficking in Jamaica with an emphasis on outreach, awareness, and reintegration. Through counseling, mentorship, and empowerment sessions, Pursuit International Foundation seeks to prevent instances of trafficking and protect the vulnerable from being exploited. Her initial training is as a counseling psychologist. This showed her firsthand how sexual exploitation could destroy the future of its victims. An article about sex tourism in Southeast Asia introduced her to the worst kind of exploitation, sex trafficking. She left her job and traveled there, spending 9 months in several Southeast Asian countries as a volunteer, offering her counseling skills to help women who were rescued. Her responsibilities included formulating treatment plans for rescued victims, co-planning outreach to women in brothels, and brainstorming ideas for sustainable projects to help reintegrate these women into society. In 2018, she founded Pursuit International Foundation, which became charitable in 2020. The aim of this organization is to equip and empower women who have been sexually exploited and who have been victims of sex trafficking. She has over 10 years of counseling experience with a focus on trauma and has worked with youth in government facilities and foster care and trauma victims in the USA, Indonesia, and Jamaica. Now to our next panelist, and this is actually our final panelist, Aaron Walters. Aaron N. Walters, JP, counselor, educator, and mentor with a well, I think diploma, sorry, honors in education and Bachelor of Science in guidance and counseling from the Michael University College, as well as a Master of Science in exceptional student education from Nova Southeastern University, Florida. He has 16 years of experience in counseling, teaching, and mentoring youth. This includes creating psychoeducation programs for children, collaborating with youth ministries to create and execute programs for camp ministries, schools, churches, and juvenile correctional facilities. He is the senior counselor at Maxfield Park Children's Home, a member of the St. Andrew Justice of the Peace, a trained facilitator at Mentoring a Nation, member of the Domestic Violence Association in St. Andrew, adjunct teacher at Whole Life College, and mediator. He has completed additional training in childhood trauma and child trafficking. Personally, he enjoys reading, writing, sports, outdoor excursions, ministering and teaching small groups, cooking, and being a father to the fatherless. So we want to say a big welcome to all our panelists this evening. And of course, Andre will also be one of the panelists and we introduced him previously. So now we're moving into the panel discussion. So we'd love to see all our panelists now. Let me see if they're up and
here we are.
Good to see everyone. Welcome, good to see everyone. So we're pretty much now onto, the last lap of this overall webinar. And we are looking for our questions. And I think that we have questions already in the chat. Indeed, the presentation, Andre, was a very rich one. It reminds me of how important it is that we have to be well, not only for us, but for others. We are stewards over our own bodies and minds to the best of our abilities. And I must say the roast breadfruit syndrome was a new term, I think, for many of us. I think now I look at roast breadfruit so differently. There's a piece in my fridge. I don't know. No, literally there is. So I'm looking at it in a whole new way now. Definitely. So thanks very much for that presentation. But we do have some questions, and I think we can pretty much jump into it. I think Lisette here has the first question. What is the probability of recovering from trauma resulting from adverse childhood experiences? So any one of our panelists can take it away now as we begin. So that's the first question, and I'll continue to feed them to you as we go along.
I think that's a good question for Aaron.
Can you repeat?
Repeat the question.
It's in the chat. So what is the probability of recovering from trauma resulting from adverse childhood experiences? That's the question.
Yeah, there is a high probability of recovery, but I suppose that will take a lot of work, and the desire or the choice of the person to be willing to avail themselves to work with either a therapist, work with a mentor, work, because coming back to the presentation about making healthy choices and all that, because sometimes we're coming out of traumatic experiences and they impact and they shape our personality, impact and shape our behavior. It's not to say that you will become stuck in it all the time, but the probability exists that there can be changes. It's just that in working with young people, I find that some of the challenges are so overwhelming that it almost seems as if there's no hope. However, once you find a space where young people can be at a place where they can talk through their issues and they can get help and they can find spaces just like ID Pioneers where they can develop a positive identity, where they can understand the importance of learning new skills, where they can understand and begin to learn and practice new ways of thinking, and begin to walk in that, then of course, it can happen, definitely.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, Aaron.
If I may add, I think what was very helpful, it was also mentioned in the presentation.
Another question.
Sorry?
What? Oh, go ahead.
I was saying if I could add, what is also very helpful, it was mentioned in the presentation, resilience. The things that can help with resilience include the kind of community you have that is strong, faith-based system, and this is from research from persons who aren't necessarily Christian. But in the research, having a faith base is very crucial to being able to overcome adverse childhood experiences. Also, education, being aware of what the issues are, knowing what the symptoms are, so you can be, okay, I see these things happening in my life, let me get the help I might need, which we're having tonight, we're getting the presentation. And also it's very important that the person from the education gets a place to be self-aware enough to know, okay, I, like Aaron said, now need the help, and then the access to the help is very important. It's crucial to know that there is hope and not to feel like because this is something that happened to you, it becomes your forever identity.
Very, very important point there about it's not the forever identity, because we're not locked into the past because the past has happened. We actually can move on from traumatic experiences.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. We have another question. What is the probability? No, sorry. What are some helpful words you could provide to someone who is at a low point mentally, who would have basically trusted you enough to mention that they are contemplating suicide, apart from statements such as you have a good life ahead of you? So the person is really asking, what other helpful words could you really provide to someone who is at the point of considering suicide?
Interesting.
I find it can be helpful, especially if we're talking about youth helping youth. One of the things that I tell my young people when I was in the school system is know your limit. So if somebody is talking to you about suicidal ideation or suicidal plans, I would suggest, saying to them, I want to be there with you to help you get the help and bring them to or refer them to someone who has a skill set to handle suicidal ideation and suicidal thoughts. It is very noble to want to offer the words of support that you want to offer, and I think you should. You know, I'm here, I'm listening. I'll be a support for you during this time. But if you know your limit and knowledge is this, then the support of I'm taking you to the help. Can I speak with you? Take you to speak to Lisette. If somebody over the ID Pioneers, if somebody at school, can I take it to the guidance counselor? If somebody at church, can I take it to the youth pastor? Just so that you don't become overwhelmed with what your peer may need at the moment. And I'm assuming we're talking to young people here because of the purpose of this program. So it is good to want to know what to say. And a big thing is I'm here with you and I support you. Another good thing is to mobilize them to go towards the trained help that they're going to need if they have these ideations or these thoughts or these feelings. Those are my thoughts.
I agree. Contemplating suicide, that's urgent. I totally agree with you, Stacey, and it's something that requires urgent attention, not something that we should take lightly. And I think that sometimes, probably in Jamaica, we may just probably exclaim something like, yeah, idiot, I mean, you go kill yourself, and ignore the fact that these persons may very well be on the verge of carrying it out, and then when it does happen, there's a deep sense of regret, for those who may have that suspicion, or it may have been mentioned too. All right, thank you. I don't know if there's anyone else who would like to add, or should I move ahead to the next question? Anyone else would like to add?
Just a small addition. I agree very much with Lady Stacey and Smith. Sometimes just being able to validate the person helps. Just being present and just listening. They would have trusted you enough to share those thoughts with you. Being present in the moment and ensuring that you give undivided attention can go a long way. And in that same vein, while you're listening, please do not use it as an opportunity to tell your life story. At that point in time, it's not really necessary. And it can sometimes give the person a sense of, oh, you're not really listening to me, you just want to use it as an opportunity to share. And that can be very off-putting. So just my 2 cents to the conversation.
Okay, but may I just quickly ask a question though, Samuel? What if the person that they have shared their intention of committing suicide to actually was previously suicidal and can use their story to help them through? Is it that shouldn't be done? Is that a don't or not to do?
It's not a definitely don't, but you can ask permission.
Okay.
So sometimes what we do is we just run ahead and share. And in that moment, that's not what the person needs. But if you ask for permission, then the person can sometimes know what it is that they want to hear. And if your story can be inspiring and they give you permission to share, then fine, go ahead.
Okay. All right.
Can I add to that?
Thank you. Go ahead, Stacey.
I want to ditto the asking them so often when we are in the helping position as a mentor. We just want to make sure we know everything and just go ahead and not just ask if your mentee or your friend, whichever person it is, okay, what do you need from me now? Do you need to just listen? Do you need me to offer a solution? What do you want now? And if they say just listen, you just listen. They might just need, and just you hearing them might take away some of that pressure that they have, and they might not be able to talk themselves into a solution even, and maybe not a solution, but a respite from the intensity of what they're struggling with at the moment. So ask them what they need from you in the moment.
Okay, so therefore I'm seeing where we should try to apply empathy and not sympathy, because probably sometimes sympathy will cause them to plunge more, into self-pity and probably even wanting to carry it out. So thanks very much for sharing, panelists. Greatly appreciated. Moving to the next. Oh, go ahead. Yes, you can go ahead.
Just in that same breath, I mean, what Sabbath and Stacey have said are excellent points. But when it is that an individual who probably has no counseling skills, whatever, and they have agreed to that as well, that if that somebody comes to them, they might even freeze, and they just freeze and don't know what, and so they're in a moment of blankness, for use of a word, that they don't know what to do at all. And so it is in that moment though that they will have to try to catch themselves quickly, and just in their facial expression, everything. It's so much to go through that moment that it might even turn the friend off by looking at their face and say, but you're not really with me at all, you don't know this. And so they might just move on. So in that moment, that split second of being told that, look, this is how I feel, like it was, I'm going to end it right now. You're going to do what? And so it's something hard for the person who is there in for the trained counselor, not in the session, but just outside, to deal with. And I think that was Stacey and somebody captured quite well, that it just to be still in that moment. And even to allow me to talk someone till you catch your breath, as it were, and have some sort of control of your own self. Then it's a fine, okay. And you can start from there. But it's just to be aware of who you are as an individual, which is going to be very important. And I believe that it speaks to us as individuals, not to take things for granted as we go along in our life day by day, but to recognize our surroundings or the people around us, what is happening in our nation, and what is likely to happen to the individual next beside us. It could be on the bus, in the taxi, where it is, and just to note something, what is happening to them, because these are the things that could help us to address even the slightest idea that somebody may be suicidal.
Yes.
A question.
Thank you very much.
A question was asked, Amanda. Is mental health care available at all hospitals, or is it just at Bellevue? Mental health care is available, I believe, at all hospitals. There should also be psychiatric clinics, which are done at the mental health, at the clinics. The psychiatric teams go to different clinics at different times in the month. And the psychiatrists themselves will go to different clinics depending on the schedule. And so one can go to a clinic on the day when the psychiatric team is going to be there to receive free care. There is no cost. And once you're also getting to the public health system, there is also access to free medication, right? Because that is provided through the National Health Fund. So there is a potential for persons to get help. But if a person is suicidal, the strong recommendations are that you go to Spanish Town Hospital, you go to KPH, you go to University of the West Indies, UWI Hospital, and of course, Bellevue Hospital is also there. All right, and do not assume that because you go to Bellevue that you're going to automatically be admitted in the hospital. A number of factors would come into play, including availability of a bed, and if it is that they deem that the person really needs admission, they would prefer that you be treated at home than for you to be admitted. It's only if you have to be that you would be admitted in the hospital.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. I presume that was actually a follow-up question associated with the question, which says, is there a basic training program that would equip the average volunteer to provide basic support to persons who may be experiencing mental challenges, especially given that the cost of counseling may be prohibitive to many, or prohibited for many? So I presume that that is why the question was asked. I guess there's a concern of affordability, naturally,
right,
of getting support. So how do we address that concern there?
Support in terms of, like, for example, counseling support is available at Bellevue Hospital, and also, for example, at Jago Health Center in Spanish Town. There is free, the psychologist goes there. The psychologist also goes to Linstead once per month. Child guidance clinics are run every Wednesday. And of course, that is a limited amount of children are seen because of just the personnel, the availability of space. All of that is free of cost, right? So if a person needs counseling and cannot afford to the cost of seeing somebody in private practice, the person can be seen at, for example, at Bellevue, depending on the availability of space. And also, for example, one can go to Bethel Baptist Church, and there are some other locations that also provide services for persons who might have a need. But if you are suicidal, my response to you is please go to the hospital and sit and speak with the doctor and let them hear, because there can be different reasons why you might actually be experiencing the symptoms, right? It can be even a simple thing as your thyroid gland is not functioning properly. And that might be the reason why you're having depressive symptoms. Okay, so we don't automatically, we need to rule out the physical factors that can affect a person. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So another question here as we are winding down. How does one encourage another to seek help based on the traits you observe in them and also knowing their history of trauma? And where can this help be found? So let me just repeat. How does one encourage another to seek help based on the traits you observe in them, also knowing their history of trauma? And where can this help be found? Don't know who would like to take this away. Which panelist?
That's a Tracy question. That's a Stacy's question.
And I was hovering over the mute button like somebody else wants it. I think the first thing I would start with is that there are stages to change. So you might have a friend who's at that space where they don't even see that they have an issue. And at that point, you're still just listening and being present for them. You might drop it in there once or twice. Hey, have you ever considered speaking to somebody professional? Have you ever considered talking to somebody about all of this so you can resolve it and, you know, be able to get some progress in this area of your life? You might get somebody who is, you know, ambivalent. They're kind of here or there, they're not really sure, and they just need the information or the support. So you're like, hey, I know a counselor here, I know a counselor here. Do you need help setting an appointment? Is it a matter of money? Here are the free ones. So you really need to check with where your friend or your mentee is, because not everybody is ready for the counseling. And I start there to help you to feel less burdened to have to convince them to go to counseling, because I think it was Aaron who spoke about the fact they have to want it. If they don't want it, and it's some kind of court mandated situation where, you know, you have to be there, they're not going to go and they're not going to participate, they're not going to benefit from it. So you have to also be aware of where they are in the stage of changes and then go from that particular point. The kinds of things you can say are the kind of things you think you would want to hear. Now, if I come and share with you, I'm going through something and you came to a seminar and you learned that, okay, these things sound like an issue. Nobody in the history of anything has liked being preached at or parented. So, you know, it's, I think you need help because I went to a seminar and it said, da, 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 da. It is, hey, I'm hearing some things right now. Have you questions? Samuel said it, question. Do you think you might need some help with this? Do you think somebody else could help you with beyond me? I'm still here no matter what, but do you think this person or that resource or that situation could be more helpful for you? Because somebody else, so you don't want to alienate them and make them feel like a project. So you really want to start with the questions to see where they're at and then ask them, do you want to try this or that?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we did have another question. I'll ask it just for the person to realize that we did not ignore it. It was actually answered in the chat. But there was a question, is there a local 24/7 crisis line available for people to call? And they were referring to a service offered where people can talk to a specialist. So for the person who asked that question, just bring it to your attention that it was answered in the chat. And for those who also may want to know the response to this question, please visit the chat, okay? Thank you. Are there any other pressing questions? Actually, we'll take one more pressing question and then we will conclude. We're winding down. So one more. Does anyone have a pressing question? Okay, so I believe we have one there in the chat. Let's see.
Are there counselors in Montego Bay? I believe that they are.
I think they are. I think there are councils in Montego Bay. I'm not sure their affiliation though, as to any particular organization. They may be affiliated with a church organization. I think there was one who was affiliated with Family Life Ministries, and but I'm not sure of their affiliation. But I'm quite sure there are councils in Montego Bay. You know, so
Yeah, and the CPFSA has therapists in Montego Bay as well.
Okay. And one can contact Family Life Ministries in the Kingston office number is 9294360, and you could ask them for information about the persons who might be working in Montego Bay. The Ministry of Health should also have other persons available as well, right, Aaron? There should be some person.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
And they are chat as well.
Yes.
Thank you. I hope as the moderator, I'm privileged to squeeze in one more question. For those who are online, please stay because we have one final giveaway. It's a very nice one. So as you know, as we're winding down, we'll ask that we'll definitely have one more giveaway. But I really have a question that I hope I get moderator privileges to ask. It's a bit, it's general, technical, but let me just quickly go ahead. How does someone know when they have to actually get counseling versus rely on the support of their community? I think that sometimes persons may be going through things. They may think that they can handle it with the use of the community and whatever strategies they may be trying. But how do you know when it's really time to see a counselor? What would be some of the main signs you look for? As this is the final question. Who wants to answer? I think Andre seems like he wants to answer. Is it Stacey-Ann?
You're gonna go, Andre?
You know, that's a very heavy question that you ask, you know.
Yeah.
Amanda,
I think so. I think so. That's why I said main point. Main point. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Thank God, the brain is ticking.
I think there are a number of factors that come into play. Number one, does a person recognize that there is actually an issue? And have they, in reflecting on the issue, realize that they might need to go and see a specialist to address that issue? Sometimes it might come for the person through reading. You know, like for example, a person might read an article, or they might come across something in the newspapers, online, that might talk about the particular issue, or maybe they might be exposed to a radio program, and that might also stimulate them to recognize that they need to actually get help to address a particular situation. So your question is kind of interweave with a number of things. The person does have support, so the community is there. But how would the person know that he or she needs to go beyond the support?
Beyond that.
Sometimes it's when the community says you actually need to go and address this issue, you know. You need to get some additional help. Sometimes the community will itself say that to you, because there's a sense in which this thing is quite large and you might need to, what would you consider seeing so and so might be part of the conversation. I think that's one of the ways that I would answer. I'm not sure if anybody else would add.
That's true. I remember once when I was at Family Life Ministries, a young man came to see me, and he said nothing was wrong with him. He just wanted to talk and to ensure he was okay. Just trying to go through a process, really. And we did have a conversation. We met about 2 or 3 times. And nothing really was wrong with him, but we could identify a few things that he could work on to straighten what he had. And so sometimes it's just an awareness of oneself. You probably come to a time in your life, you're at a certain age, whether it is 20, 25, 30, 35, whatever age it may be, and circumstances are around you. I remember when I went to class way back when, doing teaching, and I was then introduced to psychology at that time, and I'm not remembering what was being taught, and I gave out, oh, that is why whatever, and so it could be an aha moment for somebody, and they could have in that moment. Let me take it further to understand why I am this way, because they have probably seen their parents, their sister, their grandparents in their own community in a different light, or understanding how they are or why they are this way because of that. And it may not be something they like. In essence, they are good, but there's just one part of them that they don't like about themselves. And they could identify it with somebody else. Because of that person, I am this way. And so they want to check it out. But it just probably an aha moment. It could be something at that time in life that they realize, as Andre said, somebody in the community may point out to them that it is time, So it could be various reasons, but the person has to recognize for themselves sometimes what is happening.
If I may add, what I've also realized.
All right, thank you. Yes, go ahead, Samuel. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, what I've also realized is that a lot of persons seek help when they realize that their relationships with others have been affected. And you will see a husband come into therapy saying that my wife says that I've been having serious anger issues that have started to lead to aggressive tendencies. I don't believe I need therapy, but my wife does, and she has issued an ultimatum. I mean, to me, and this is my personal view, to me, it doesn't really matter how a person comes to therapy, but once they find themselves there, that is an avenue to actually help. So that's one, the relationships with persons. And then for other persons, they realize that the quality of life has been greatly affected, and things that they were achieving before, motivations that they've had before, the tenacity with which they grasped life, it has just evaporated, been eroded. And then that's when they, and I know that this is a cliche saying, but the saying goes that when you actually reach rock bottom, the only place to go is up. So persons have, and I heard, and I almost said Bishop Monroe, sorry. I heard Sir Monroe.
Is that prophetic? Is that prophetic?
Well, I don't know.
No, not for Jim, no.
So I heard Sir Monroe mention the aha moment, and rock bottom can provide a aha moment, that moment when you really see that, all right, this is the worst that I have been in. This is the worst state that I have been in. Maybe I actually do need therapy. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you. Go ahead.
Finally, for those who can't consent for themselves, our children, who sometimes don't know what is happening with them, who are just, who don't have the capacity to understand, because they have young developing brains, they do not understand some of the things that they do. It's, as Andre said, it's very important that you have a community that observes, whether it's family or it's people within the community, whether it's church, whether it's your local community, school, whatever, it's teachers, whoever. It's very important that we have persons who take such an interest in the lives of our children, who will see the issues and will now ensure that parents, counselors, whoever it is, that are connected to those persons, to these children, are now are now placed in a position where the concerns are expressed and the knowledge is shared, which will lead to a referral for an assessment and treatment. So that's the thing.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that,
Thank
Aaron.
you.
Excellent way to end our time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, panelists. Forgive me, my camera has to be off because of the bandwidth issues. So your moderator does have a face, just temporarily doesn't have a face. But thank you very much. It was a very enriching discussion. I'm sure we have all benefited from this session. It was a pleasure. I want to just say a big thank you to all those who have joined. Thank you, panelists, for sharing. Thank you for the organizers, Lisette, and the rest of the team. A big thank you. Now, for our final giveaway, which I'll go ahead and quickly ask for the first correct response, quickly in the chat, as we are concluding. List two target groups where ID pioneers serve youth. List two target groups where ID pioneers serve youth. So I'm looking for the responses quickly, and you will definitely be winning a nice prize. Well, the prize is actually a $1,000 credit, phone credit. So let's go. List two target groups where ID pioneers serve youth. Still waiting for the responses quickly. Do we need a Jeopardy soundtrack? Mishka is asking if she's allowed to answer. Mishka, you won something earlier. Oh, Lisette is allowing her. Okay. All right. Lisette, you're the boss. Go ahead. Mishka won though. Mishka won something already. No one is going to give it a try. Come on, you need that credit. Need that credit to make a call. Need that credit to put your data on. Okay, so so youths in homes. Okay, we need, and so, okay, well, we really wanted two target groups. So one response is youth in homes. One response is schools and the children's home. I would take that response there, schools and children's home, because that answer came at once. So Sandra, congratulations. The answer is school. And yes, we'll take children's home as state home. So that's correct. Chanel, I'm sorry you didn't win this time, because if you place the two answers in one, you would have gotten it, but based on how you responded. But you are correct also though, Chanel, homes as well as churches. So congratulations to Sandra. You have won yourself the credit, and or Zoom admin will definitely reach out to you to arrange how you could actually receive that prize. Thank you, Chanel, for your participation. You're still a winner. And now we're moving to our thank you. That will be done by Mishka Hemmings. Mishka, you can now proceed.
If I may, Amanda.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I on the subject of, serving, I just want to say thank you to ID Pioneers for the 2 years that they spent at Maxfield Park. I know definitely, even though for a long time I was on vacation leave, but Nathan, I'm sure you all remember Nathan Morgan. He always was so thrilled and excited about the program, and I've seen where it had impacted him greatly. So I want to say thank you guys.
Thanks for sharing, Aaron. Sure, the ID Pioneers team appreciates your feedback. Thank you. Over to you now, Mishka.
Good night, everyone. Just let me know if you're hearing me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we are.
Great. So I just want to say on behalf of the ID Pioneer family and everyone who is present tonight, a special thank you to Mr. Davis and our panelists. I can say confidently on behalf of everyone that we're grateful for the information that you have so clearly provided us, being able to put our feelings or to see a lot of the things that we're feeling and where it falls and how to really address it, not just for us, but for the persons around us. I'm very grateful for that. I truly did not know that Jamaica has so much in place for persons who need, including myself, this mental attention. And again, I am grateful. I truly appreciate, and I must say, the way that you guys were able to put numbers to what we're seeing and feeling, that really emphasize that we're not alone in what may be our anxiety or depression. And what stood out to me is 1 in 5. And so 10 of us in the room, that means me and somebody else must feel the same.
Yeah.
And that there's help for me and that person. And then somebody else, another 2 might fall in the same category. And Jamaica is equipped to help us. And I'm truly grateful for that information. I just want to encourage you guys to continue doing what you're doing because it is impactful. And ID Pioneer is truly grateful. And I know we can implement it now when we meet our youths across the island to pinpoint that, certain behavior might actually be for reasons that we weren't able to pinpoint before. And we're grateful for that. So thank you again.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to teaching the team more about mental health so that we are able to have even a greater impact.
I'm grateful for knowing why I'm sleeping so much and why I eat so much. Now I have justification behind it.
All right.
Thank you very much for sharing, Mishka. I'm glad that you were blessed by the presentation and you were edified, definitely. Handing over to Lisette as we pretty much are very much near the end now. Lisette, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Amanda. And I mean, after such an amazing thank you by Mishka, what else can I say? I think Mishka said it all. In terms of how impactful this presentation and this discussion has been and will be for us here at ID Pioneers. We think about the impact of low self-esteem on stress, and that is oh my goodness, really eye-opening. You think about pseudo self and the impact of that on walking in purpose. You think about the roast breadfruit syndrome and our connection to slavery and the impact on identity and all of those things that, man, there's a lot that as human beings we are carrying. There's a lot that our youth are carrying, not just adverse childhood experiences, but all the way back to slavery. There's a lot of work for us here at ID Pioneers and the pool of psychologists that were here this evening to do. But we're grateful that we have all said yes to the call, and Jamaica is so much more better for that. And I want to just acknowledge us this evening again and say thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much, Director Davis, for pulling this together and serving us and our youth and serving Jamaica in this way. Amanda, thank you so much. Such an amazing job at hosting the evening. Really very well done. And I personally, Amanda wouldn't want me to do this, but I personally want to put in a plug here for Amanda and her business. She has an amazing plant business, and I think she sells it a whole lot better than I do because she's an amazing entrepreneur and saleswoman. But I would love to encourage us. We all, Christmas Christmas is coming and we have a lot of gifts that we want to give to persons, and what an amazing way to show persons that you love and appreciate them than by blessing them with a plant. And it's not just plants, but there's plant care as well. So definitely check out her social media handles and also her website, which is in the chat, to get a little bit more about her. She's totally volunteered her time this evening. She's totally volunteered her time over the last couple of days supporting us to pull everything together, and she's amazing at what she does, and she's doing it all at no cost. And so let us show her some love and visit her social, her business, support her business, check her out on social media and her website, and let's show her some love. If you are here this evening and you want to volunteer with ID Pioneers as well, we certainly would love to have you journey with us. And so feel free to check us out on social media as well. That information is appearing in the chat, and you can check out our website to hear more about what we're about and upcoming projects that you can volunteer with. Again, thank you so much everyone for being here this evening. Thanks to our volunteers as usual, and guys, looking forward to seeing you on the other end of this session, where we'll continue to serve youths into greatness and support them to be who God has designed them to be. Have an amazing night, everyone.
Thank you. Have a very good night. Take care. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
All the best.
Have a blessed night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.